Welcome to the Crypto Gaming Institute podcast. Today, we have Mr. Al Morris, one of the pioneers in the crypto world. This whole beautiful thing that we're a part of, founder of the koii.network. Dude, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with me on the show. I know you're doing some incredible things. Welcome.
Yeah, it's great to take a break from Red and Rust programs, actually. Based on the chat that we had before the call, I think we're probably going to go very deep into some great topics here. So should be a good discussion.
Totally. Yeah, let's put on our deep dive suits and get to it. So would love to really start off and understand more about you and really hear your story of how did you get to this point where you're with in your life. What's your story?
Wow, big background. Hey, I started out in robotics. That was my original first kind of love with technology. Went to school for robotics, got out, was working in the space for a little while, and realized that there were a lot of upstream problems, kind of like mostly around internet and kind of the knowledge ecosystem that exists around it. Um, that seemed to be kind of preventing a lot of the progress that would exist in the world. So I got very interested in DAOs back in like 2016, did a lot of kind of deep reading about Ethereum, went on to found weteachblockchain.org along with some other people in Chicago. And we had kind of a school set up where we were teaching people about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, NFTs, even as they were very early back then. And yeah, kind of just went down this rabbit hole of learning more and more about crypto and wanting to build more and more decentralized stuff, and got here. And now Koi is kind of the toolkit that we've built to make it easier for other people to do the same.
Awesome. So a quick question, just to make sure, because I know there are going to be some people out there coming from a robotics background. Did you actually build a robot of yourself to duplicate yourself, and so you could kind of stay and tinker in the lab and send out your robot to do other things? And are you the real version of you, or are we talking to the robot version of you?
It would probably be one of the first things you put into a robot like that to avoid outing itself. So I won't be able to answer that question, unfortunately. But
Oh, dang, you're right. You're right. But anyways, in all seriousness, that's amazing. So you started in robotics, went more the education route, and now you founded this. What was the impetus for moving into crypto in the first place? I mean, obviously, you're deep into technology, but like, what was the draw? What was the appeal? And what really won you over to come into the space in the first place?
So I was living in Chicago around 2016 or so, and at the time we had this kind of crazy election cycle where I was traveling around a lot as part of my robotics job, meeting a lot of people in factory towns all over the place, and in that process, kind of started to see a lot of the issues with how the internet works. So there's this kind of massive problem where people get siloed into one particular way of thinking. We're seeing this right now with COVID as well. People end up really only talking to other believers in their particular vein. And then when there's a conflict point where both of those sides are involved in the same discussion, people are like almost unable to have discourse because they're not even using the same words. So I started building a product called the Trust browser extension that was meant to sort of bridge that gap by helping people to navigate the online discourse and be able to identify things that might not be potentially true, or just be able to identify like if something was coming from a very different point of view, how that kind of could map to what they were thinking about. And we tried to build a DAO actually in around like 2016 to support this endeavor. And so that was my first foray into crypto. Started looking at a lot of the different technologies underlying that in order to further decentralize what we were doing. We saw a lot of the shortcomings in like how you can actually deploy a fully decentralized app or fully decentralized metaverse. So we've kind of tried to bridge a lot of those gaps with Koi, which is why I'm wearing these fantastic t-shirts. I don't know if people can actually see this, but we've got this decentralize or die t-shirt that we give out to people.
Love it. Love it. So it was really coming from the perspective of trying to bring humanity closer together and away from the extremes of anger and non-helpfulness.
Yeah, you could say that, because the danger with the internet is that, well, sorry, I guess the opportunity with the internet is that we have one system that everybody uses, and it's kind of like telepathy. You can talk to another person across the world almost instantaneously. You can share ideas, all that stuff. But the real danger is that that becomes corrupted and leads to sort of the enslavement of humanity to technology, kind of the stuff that like Heidegger would have talked about in the philosophy classes, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And it even works. I guess it even could, in theory, work with robots. As part of the telepathy of, even though we
Well,
can't
that's where
confirm or
the nightmare
deny.
scenario comes from, right? Because the robots work for something that's corrupted, and if our giant robot that is Facebook brainwashes us all to have very extremist thoughts, the robots that we build, the ones that Boston Dynamics builds, for example, that can run around and shoot guns and stuff like that, will be controlled by the populace, And so, if you undermine democracy by controlling people's minds the wrong way, then you get into a very, very dangerous place very quickly as these other robots advance.
Well, yeah, that's definitely not ideal. So I'm glad we have people much smarter than myself, being you, to be tackling this problem from a technological standpoint. Um, yeah, so that's definitely a big problem here. So that seems like a perfect kind of fertile seeding ground, or a platform, or a place of thought to then give birth to wanting to build infrastructure to support change and to make it easier to like build better things that can help solve these problems. Is that really where like this idea of koi came from, and what was really the origin of that, um, from the perspective of like when did you first think of it, and then how did you then bring that into reality?
Sure. The trick with anything like this is that it's not actually about being better than Facebook, or any of these other systems. Like, if we were going to build a truly decentralized metaverse, we need to be significantly better than the free options that are out there. Not only decentralized, but also significantly better. There's that famous, like, it's a Venn diagram, and it says fast, cheap, and good as the 3 points on the Venn diagram. And it's, the classic joke is that you cannot get all three. So if you're hiring a consultant to do something, they might do it fast and well, but they might probably not be very cheap, because nobody who can do it fast and well is also going to be cheap. And if you want to buy a blockchain, you're often going to want something that's got low transaction fees, is fast, and also works really, really well. And the same is true of a metaverse or decentralized application, or even just anything that can disrupt the current paradigm that we have, because people are pretty set in their ways when it comes to most of this technology. Getting somebody to change their email provider from Google, for example, is going to be very, very difficult to do long run. And so there's a lot of this centralization that's occurring, and like the people that built a lot of these companies aren't really there anymore. And so it's actually being run by a team of mostly kind of the CFO types, right? Like the people that are kind of controlling the money. So the opportunity with DAOs is that we can build completely decentralized processes for managing all of this money that goes into running all of these technology stacks. And we can maybe do it in a way that's also really fast and cheap, which is a kind of an exciting opportunity. But the hard part is, if you're a developer, you probably can't do that right away, because you would have to be like a leading world-class developer and then go and build your own blockchain, and then build a bunch of the different app templates. And like, you'd have to build your own wallet like we did. So we built our own wallet called Finny. That's a cross-chain wallet that talks to most other blockchains. That took us about 6 months with a team of like 5 people. And that was just a part of Koi. Like, we had to have a whole team of people working on just building out that wallet functionality. And so if you're coming into this as somebody who wants to build a project, you don't want to have to go through that whole process. So a lot of what we're doing is kind of building these things first, doing the hard work, and then open sourcing a lot of the templates so other people can use them.
Okay, so that's really like the underlying thesis of let's build things that work, and then share the things that we're building as almost like templates and tools for other people to then build on top of, or kind of take to the next level. Is that kind of the underlying thesis?
Yeah, exactly. Because if we all share this stuff, it can actually be fast, good, and cheap, which is fantastic.
Oh, that's really powerful. So, from the perspective of like, and I actually want to take a step back before we move forward. But one of my friends brought up a really good point to me that I hadn't thought of before, um, which goes back to the whole internet idea of like we're all using the internet, right? And
Mhm.
in order to even access the internet in the first place, there's a ridiculous amount of hardware and wires and just infrastructure that the internet service providers have, and they're completely centralized, and they have like a lot of monopolies. I know just in my area there's like 3 good options that you could choose from, and they're not even good options. Like, all their customer service sucks, but they don't care because they know that you're forced to stay with them, right? So like, even backing up to the just the basic foundational infrastructure level, like we still have a long way to go to be fully decentralized. How do
Yeah,
we solve that sort of problem?
I know where you're going with that, and it seems like it's almost a fantasy to think that we can move into a world where that technology is controlled by the people who are using it. I think the thing to remember, though, is that it's not about necessarily decentralizing all of the infrastructure as it is decentralizing the trust of control of that infrastructure. So, for example, if I'm using a social media app, I don't necessarily want to know that the server is coming from everybody's computers, though that is possible with parts of Koi that we've built. Some of our node infrastructure is very lightweight, so you could do that kind of application. Um, the thing that people more care about, I think, though, is knowing that the servers that are being run, wherever they are being done in a way that is being audited by other people, where there is a certain amount of transparency about how they're operating and where the information is being sent. And that's actually more what we focused on, is sort of these incentive models, so that you can have auditable tasks and activities that run on these servers. So that instead of kind of just handing over everything and giving complete control to these platforms, we have more of a bundle of rights that can be standardized across different experiences, and then the user can identify which ones are following which bundles of rights. And so, maybe some sites will still use certain amounts of kind of spyware or sell some of your information, but they'll have to disclose that. And you can audit their source code because it'll be open source, and you'll be able to tell that that's what's happening under the hood, which means maybe you can demand that they give you some kickbacks as a user.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I agree with what you're saying completely. It almost doesn't, like, not every single piece of every single piece has to be decentralized, and um, but the part where we have trust and that's necessary for like our information and our data and the things that we're interfacing with, um, we at least need to be able to check and see what's actually going on, especially on the, just to kind of harp on the data part, especially on that piece. So, this is actually one of my underlying theses, and I'd love to get your opinion on it. I actually think one of the solutions to the idea of like data and privacy rights is to have like a built-in rev share, where if your data is being used, you should get paid for that in some way. As maybe just as a function of like the revenue generated from that data that you contribute to the platform, you should get some sort of kickback, like you were saying. I almost think that could be the revenue that goes out to people in a form of like universal basic income, which could solve a lot of problems.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts as far as that goes? And just thinking about it from your perspective.
So it's this concept called data unions. It's been around for a while. There's a lot of different places where they're trying to kind of implement this in differing levels. So like one example would be if I need training data for my AI that's going to recognize cats in images, maybe everybody in our data DAO all submit images of their cats. And we all just sit there taking photos of our cats all afternoon. And now we've got a bunch of really good training data for this AI. And then the next week, maybe they're like, okay, we need images of cats sitting next to boats. And then the guys who have boats all go sit down next to their boat, or everybody takes their cat to the yacht club and they take photos of their cat in front of the boat. And now we've got this nice data set that everybody can look at, and they pay to use it because they can train things against it and all that kind of stuff. That works really, really well for certain really specific applications. Kind of what we're thinking, though, is that the real power comes from this trust aspect. So rather than the data that you create while you're browsing the internet being the real kind of contribution of value that you have, it actually could be that your reputation as a real person is really valuable. And so maybe it's that, we know that, 30% of the bots or 30% of the accounts on Twitter are bots. So maybe we know that you're a real person and you opt into being tracked. And by opting in and kind of proving that you're a real person, when somebody wants to do some kind of a survey or something like that, they actually want to include you. And just by the fact that you have a reputation as a real individual, you could get paid just for existing or being part of a platform, for that matter. There's a guy that's building a social network on top of Koi at the moment. And in his design, what he's actually offering is that when people look at your content, they could earn tokens and actually mine new tokens just for looking at your content if you have a high reputation. And so there's some kind of like interesting social dynamic here where we can take the reputation fabric at the core of the internet and kind of create DeFi elements to that reputation system, which might actually be even like an extra step beyond the kind of monetization that's happening on Web 2 right now.
Well, that would certainly be easier because it's built in a way that's like, instead of having to go back and like go dig through a bunch of legacy systems and platforms. It's just totally redefining it in a way that it's built from the get-go to just make sense like that. That's really interesting. How do you
Right.
how do you see, because I actually think one of the biggest data gathering activities or data gathering industries or spaces is gaming, because people spend a lot of time gaming, people take a lot of actions, and you generate a lot of data um, in a game. And as part of a game, how do you see this whole data piece playing a crucial part in the crypto gaming industry moving forward, where things are going to be on chain, things are going to be more decentralized, but we also have this aspect of like people use pseudonyms, and it's not always going to be clear like who exactly is who, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think this kind of comes to the reframing of value around subjective value. So it used to be that value is mostly defined by like a monarch of some kind who said like, I really care about diamonds, but I don't care as much about lumber. So lumber isn't worth as much as diamonds, and there was kind of like a hierarchy of what they wanted the most. Um, I think the thing that's really interesting right now, especially what's happening with play to earn games and like in-game purchases being NFTs, is that a lot of those items typically wouldn't have had much value ascribed to them because there's only a small population of people who really care about that particular thing. But actually, what we're starting to realize with crypto is that having just a very small, specific group of people who care about something, say Axie Infinity, the purchasing group within Axie Infinity is very small. I mean, that small group of people is driving an entire economy because they're willing to purchase something for a certain nominal price from their perspective that then is able to enrich somebody's life across the world. And so those kinds of applications have a lot of potential where you have a new kind of content that's being created that otherwise wouldn't exist, a new type of kind of a financial interaction or a reputation interaction. And I think the very cool thing about that is that within those ecosystems, we will also see the evolution of not only the data economy, but also kind of a larger asset economy that will exist. And the data within that ecosystem will be contained around those assets, because instead of taking a photo of your cat, for example, you might be taking a photo of a digital pet that you have in a game, which might be a completely different kind of information that they're looking for, because now the people that make that game want to understand how people feel about that particular type of pet and how they feel about it in different environments and what kind of people they are for wanting to look at that pet. So you might even be able to sell access to your real world reputation, because then that would correlate all the information about who you are in game as well. So there's a lot of these. Yeah, you're very right. There's a lot of different linkages there.
Oh, that's a really, really cool idea of almost tying those two things together. So,
Mhm.
from the perspective of obviously you're looking at everything that's going on in crypto, and you're building a powerhouse project here. How do you see and view crypto gaming and the metaverse, and NFTs as a part of the whole Web3 landscape, the part of where humanity's going, the internet and digital? Like, what role does it play, and how are you building for that, or taking that into account, in regards to koi?
That's a really interesting point. So the bigger picture here is this kind of the unraveling of the US dollar as the only metric of value. So there's units of measure for all kinds of things in the world, right? Like we have the meter, which is a unit of measure of length, as is the foot, depending on which system you use. And similarly, we now have the US dollar since about the 1950s is kind of the measure of value. When people are transacting internationally, they tend to use this metric. Um, and I think there's sort of a big shift happening right now, especially where you have supply chains that are mostly denominated in local currencies. Now that we have the internet automatically converting all these prices for us, and the local currencies are now being used to set the value of those goods within that economy instead of setting them to some kind of international standard. So we're having like kind of a localization that's occurring. The cool implication of that for crypto is that there is a massive shift now within crypto towards building very subjective experiences for certain groups. So if the Bored Ape Yacht Club wants to work with Halo 2, like if we were to revive Halo 2 and make a Bored Ape Yacht Club version of it, that might actually have a gigantic amount of NFTs associated with it, a gigantic economy that would then exist for that group of people. And it would be kind of exclusionary for other people outside of that group. But that's okay. And so we're kind of seeing like a secularization happening where people are sort of moving into their specific area and then creating an economy there and having their own transactions and their own reputation systems. And I think gaming is kind of the original place where this always happened. So, you know, we had in-app purchases for a long time where people were buying in-game assets that they couldn't use outside that world. I myself used to farm gold in World of Warcraft at one point. You know, there's different ways that you go about paying for the World of Warcraft subscription every month, right? So the thing that happens there, though, is that you're creating this whole group of people who are very passionate about something that matters not at all to anybody else outside of their group. And that's an amazing thing, because it means that now that group of people probably don't really care who the president is. You know, they might not, because now they're in this game world and they're not really paying attention to this other economy that's happening around them, or maybe they're even actually transacting like in Axie Infinity, and their economy and, you know, their bills are actually getting paid by the game that they're playing. And so we've created these international communities kind of, and I think COVID maybe has accelerated this a bit. You know, we've all got internet connections, but maybe don't have the ability to go downtown anymore. So there's a lot of differences.
So I actually don't think it'll be as separate and like and localized, because what happens then when something that happens to the US dollar, if things are priced a lot of times in dollars, like I think we're seeing the demand for dollars increase rapidly with crypto. Like the more crypto is proliferated, the more the entire world is trying to use crypto to get more US dollars, then SLP being priced in dollars a lot of times, I almost think people will care more about what happens with what the president's doing, because they want to make sure that what's happening there isn't affecting the price of the US dollar, which is affecting the price of SLP, which directly affects what they're doing on a day-to-day basis. I mean, could you see a world where that actually becomes a more of the reality, where we become more interconnected and interdependent?
Yeah, I could see a bit of both sides of it. I think the thing I'm excited about is that people are creating these new types of structures that aren't as dependent on the old structures as much. But I do see what you mean, that there are still some linkages back. It would depend, though, I think, where your hosting is as well. So if you're playing a game that's hosted in not the US, then it immediately doesn't matter as much. But it's a very interesting system. There's a book recently that came out by Ray Dalio. I read it over the kind of Christmas holidays, called the Principles for Dealing with a Changing World Order. And it's very interesting. He talks about the evolution of different currency standards over time and kind of how they've evolved, especially how they have displaced one another. And the very interesting thing to me at the moment is that rather than the US dollar getting displaced, I think what we're seeing is just lots of parallel economies growing within the same ecosystem, so that we don't necessarily have the same kind of interdependence, but maybe we have actual independence of the individuals within that economy, which could be very exciting, especially if it means that we get paid to play video games.
Especially, yep. Double clicking on that one for sure. So okay, let's talk about this more specifically in in the perspective of Koi Network, and how you're really like guiding and shaping the project based on what you're seeing in crypto gaming. Like, are you building in a way to where you want games to build with your tools on your platform? Like, how do you see the actual game projects interfacing with Koi, and how important they are for Koi, and vice versa?
So the thing about Koi is that we aren't designed to be the platform that you build on. It's really more of a toolkit that makes it easier to build certain types of things. The way that we make money off of that is that we have a network of nodes that we're now deploying that will have everything from people's mobile phones to their desktop computers to actual server farms that you can deploy onto in a trustless way where it's audited. And what this means is that you can deploy an entire application written in JavaScript currently, but we've got a couple other types of programming languages we'll introduce later. And this application that you deploy can completely run in a trustless and transparent way. And so we offer that as kind of the cream of the crop for anybody that wants to build really, really fully decentralized stuff. But in the meantime, you can also build atomic NFTs and use our NFT toolkit to build your game. And if you do that, then you'll be able to mine koi tokens every single time that somebody looks at content within that game. That doesn't require you to use any of our tech or pay us anything. You don't even really need koi tokens to do that. But you can set up an entire application running on decentralized storage using the koi token to kind of monetize that app. And you can also integrate with other platforms. I mentioned Fruit before that's going to be coming online. And those will basically allow you to earn additional rewards just for people using the product without necessarily having to sell in-game assets or anything like that. So it can be a great onboarding strategy.
Oh, that's cool. That's really cool. So really, you're looking at it as you want to build infrastructure that then games will deploy on top. I don't know if on top of, but like they're deploying through Koi and they're using the tools that are built. It seems like not only by Koi, but also the other tools that are built with Koi, and it's all going to kind of work together pretty seamlessly. How does that all work?
How does it work? I have a whiteboard for you, actually. I drew this yesterday.
Perfect.
It's kind of an explanation. It's very, very complicated. In the middle, we have nodes. Oh, there it is. In the middle, we've got nodes. So right here, these are all our koi nodes. And they have this thing called the Kohaku state that talks to decentralized storage networks like Arweave and Filecoin. So you can dump all your stuff into the storage networks, not on Koi, just on the storage networks that you would use otherwise. And then our network can read that information and add to it and update it over time. So you get this fantastic system where you've got all of your nodes are run by Koi users, so you don't have to run your own nodes. And you can use decentralized storage, whichever network you want. We've also got a thing called validator nodes coming online that's going to allow you to also talk to lots of other systems. So you can have one state object for your entire app. So you don't have to go and have like a bunch of servers that watch all these different blockchains and then keep everything in sync. You can just have it all deployed seamlessly with one system. The neat part that we're also working on at the moment, which I didn't get into there, is that we also have a layer 1 that we've built as a proprietary Koi topic that will basically allow you to have very fast transactions and a lot of that kind of stuff built into this whole system. So you get the nodes, they do architecture stuff for you. You can deploy an app using the Koi X template as well. So you can actually build an entire React application just kind of out of the box. We have all the toolkits already installed for you. You get attention tracking on that as well. And you can set it up so that all the media is actually NFTs. So if you wanted to build a full game using like Unreal Engine or something like that, we don't have all of those templates for you yet, but we could help you build them as well.
Cool. So as far as like the best use case that you've seen thus far, what are the people who are leveraging Koi as part of or as their entire tech stack? Like, what are they doing right? How are they really taking the most advantage of the different capabilities that you have? And maybe that can inspire other people to get some ideas and to consider building.
For sure. So there's a music streaming company building on Koi, and they're planning to use their individual app users, like every single mobile device connected to their app will also act as a node. So their users will be mining Koi tokens, and they'll also be paying Koi tokens to the artist every time they listen to their songs. So that's just a fantastic little ecosystem where all that they've done really is take some of the code that we gave them and start building portals with it. But every time that somebody comes to that portal, they're going to be rewarding the artist by helping them mine Koi tokens. In addition to that, though, we also have a lot of this kind of background microservices stack running. So the microservices can be used for everything from web scraping to kind of hosting a DApp. So that, for example, with TreeSpace, where they're building a social media product, a lot of their content is going to exist on decentralized storage. So getting that content to show up in an index and then show up on your homepage of your site in a newsfeed view is very complicated a lot of the time. There's a lot of different moving parts. You have to kind of put feeds together for all that information and then have it in a standardized format. So we have a lot of those formats already ready to go. So it makes it really easy to just kind of piece them together, kind of like Lego blocks, and then you have a nicely fully decentralized app. We're also very close with the Filecoin and Arweave teams now. So making it easier and easier for people to go and talk to decentralized storage and understand some of the considerations there. Decentralized storage has been around for probably 5 or 8 years as a concept. So the ability to store your files onto somebody else's computer. And it's sort of an extension of what happened with torrenting, where you could download files using LimeWire or something like that from somebody else's device. But what's happened recently is that there's been an explosion of these types of storage companies because of blockchain, because it's a great way to sell a token. That's a really simple use case for a token, right? You're like, oh, I'll pay you to store my file on your computer. But knowing when to use which storage option can be very complicated. So we've done a lot of that. We've tried out a lot of those systems, and we kind of have an understanding of how to make things happen a little faster as well.
Very cool. So when you see, you're looking at obviously the future of blockchain, the future of crypto, and the metaverse. What are you the most excited about?
In the metaverse, wow, big question. I got an Oculus Rift over Christmas, or an Oculus Quest rather. I wasn't that excited about that. It kind of made me nauseous. So tried that out for a little while. I got cut in half by a like 7-year-old or something with a katana, and then that was kind of the end of that adventure. I am very excited about the utility of NFTs beyond just buying and selling them. I think people are going to start using them for all kinds of stuff, like just as a way to package up information. And so when you look at like a three-dimensional metaverse, it's hard to imagine how that connects to like the NFTs that you see on OpenSea. But what we've been thinking about is this idea of atomic NFTs, where you have essentially each little piece of information, like each in-game asset, and like not even the assets that you can own, but like also the NPCs, like items that you can buy in a shop, everything that goes through that whole system, including like I don't know, even like if we go back to the World of Warcraft example, if you have to go kill 10 hogs, each of those hogs is an NFT, maybe temporarily. Maybe they spawn, they're an NFT briefly, and then they die, and then they're gone. But they're there, and they're part of this whole data structure. And so we have the ability now to have this data structure exist in a completely peer-to-peer way, which is a massive, massive advancement. And that is going to pave the way not only for like censorship-free speech, but also for kind of new types of games that people haven't imagined. So like maybe there's a game where everybody has their own Minecraft server running on their device. Like maybe you open the website and now you're hosting the game. And there's a lot of implications for that. You know, you can create new types of experiences. And that could be really, really powerful, especially if we can get people to start using their Xboxes for something more than playing games. Because I feel like if I turn off my Xbox, it should actually be useful the next day. You know, it should be running the whole time in the background, just kind of like maybe validating tasks. Maybe it can do something like web scraping for me. Maybe I can get a free game console in my house because it pays its own bills. You know, maybe I can pay my internet bill with it. That would be fantastic.
I love that. One of the things that I'm very excited about, and I hope somebody builds it, and maybe you could tell me how easy it would be to build this with Koi, but I have this kind of dream of documenting important in-game history through NFTs. An example: let's say you have like World of Warcraft, but fully crypto gaming version, and so you have like this epic PvP battle where you have the Guild of the Flaming Swords versus the Guild of the Frozen Shields, whatever. And so these guilds are now going into this epic battleground and they're fighting it out to the death, and they're just going at it, and there's like hundreds of people on each side, and it's like a full scale decentralized crypto gaming war in this metaverse, or this one part of the metaverse. That should be documented. That there should be something that, like, maybe it's an AI that's like gumming around just like screenshotting it, or like somehow documenting this event in the history of this game, and being able to associate all the different players and like almost like tag them in an experience, in like a memory. But that should all be documented on chain as an NFT that then people can like invest in, or the game can sell, or like whatever the service that's doing it is like documenting it, snapshotting it, and then selling it as like, this is a piece of game history between all these different things. How would you do something like that with Koi? Because it sounds like you have the ability to do it, but I'm not technically gifted enough to know how that would actually go down.
So I think it's a great idea. NBA Top Shot has been very successful with having in-game moments from the NBA be owned as NFTs, and I think this would be very similar, but for the e-gaming world. All you would need to do to have it would be just to somehow validate that somebody's kind of like highlight reel actually happened at the time. I could see something like proof of access being very similar there. Or in fact, actually, if you had Koi attention tracking built into your game, you would have that by default, because you would know that everybody was there and they could all sign a copy of the record at the end. I think another cool application for this, like outside of the MMO games, would be something along the lines of just taking all of your plays of the game from something like Overwatch. Because you have these play of the game snapshots that are already stored in the game, and the game's already validated them. And so if you could get those somehow onto the blockchain, or even just to get them onto decentralized storage permanently. So like with tools like Arweave is actually an archival service. So it's meant to be a storage network, but it's also permanent. So once you put something in there, it can never get deleted. It's just like the whole video file is on chain forever. And so putting something like this into that kind of a place would keep it safe for quite a long time. You could probably even actually set up a website to do that on Koi, and it wouldn't take you very long to set it up. So maybe we should get you a grant so you can start working on that.
Yeah. And even, there's even another thing that I think is going to be really important as far as like content creation goes. So right now we're blasting and streaming this interview out to the masses on a variety of social media platforms, right? Unfortunately, the ones that we're going to are mostly Web 2. And, they have their own like issues with, I see them as issues as like they could deplatform the CGI account, right? I want
Mhm.
every single interview to be published as an NFT. And then, like, almost every second of every interview, or like important clips and ideas and concepts, be like extracted as clips and also published as NFTs. So you have like the main episode and then the individual important concepts, maybe question by question or thought by thought or whatever, also published as NFTs. Would there be a way to do that automatically, to where it would be as easy as what we're doing now, which is we're having a conversation, but behind the scenes, the technology is like analyzing it, publishing it, cutting it up into or extracting different scenes and clips from it, and then publishing those as NFTs also. Like, is that possible, and how would that actually happen?
Yeah, so there's a couple ways to do this. We have a project called the Koi Creator Studio that we've set up, which is kind of intended to eventually evolve to something like that. At the moment, what we do for people is we help them publish onto decentralized storage via our Atomic NFT standard. And once that's been done, then we can actually help them cross-post onto platforms like YouTube, Spotify, for example. And if someone visits that website using the Finny wallet, we're working on having a tag in that content so that we can actually pay you your attention rewards, even if somebody's watching it on YouTube. And so that's coming down the pipeline probably in the next year or so to be able to have that kind of cross-platform tracking. But for the moment, the trick is to actually make sure that they're all getting created as NFTs up front. So one of the things I've been hoping to do in the near future actually is to find a publishing platform, kind of like the one that we're talking on right now, where we can make a deal with them to push all their content to Atomic NFTs right away. Because if you registered as an NFT at the time that you're creating it, then you can go and tag all those other feeds and make sure that the attention tracking works in all those places.
Cool. Well, I think we have another conversation off air to have about that.
Yes, we do.
But let's kind of circle back here. So I'm really excited about the future of crypto gaming, obviously, but also the role that Koi is going to play in the metaverse, and I'm just really excited about it. I would love to hear more about what you see as some of the important milestones that we're going to hit as we're developing the metaverse and building this from the perspective of like, where are we now in the life cycle of this whole thing, and what are we going to see from your perspective as like important kind of check marks to know like, hey, we've made it, and we're going towards this beautiful idea of the metaverse and its true beauty of what it could be.
Mhm. I'm with you. I think the thing that happened in 2020 and 2021, just maybe as a side effect of COVID, was this creation of digital assets as an actual thing that the average person understands. Um, and it might have just been that people sold these incredibly expensive ones, or that there was a few of these big sales that people heard about. But there's enough people now that understand what an NFT is and what a digital asset is, that we're okay with this idea of digital property, which didn't exist 2 years ago. Um, that's been a big thing that everyone in crypto has been waiting for a while, because what it did was it got a whole bunch of people to install MetaMask wallets who now understand what a key is. They have a seed phrase, they have a paper wallet backed up somewhere. And every single one of those people is now an early adopter who will explain it to everyone else. And I think what we're going to see in the next 2 to 3 years is this hockey stick curve as all of those people go out and brag about how cool their NFTs are. And it's already happening. You can see it. You've got people like Paris Hilton talking about NFTs every day. Snoop Dogg's got an NFT personality on Twitter. Like, these people don't mess around. When they make a brand decision like that about their personal brand, they don't step back from it because that would be a failure on their part. And so we're just going to see all of these people keep doing this at a massive, massive scale. And I think probably within the next like 5 or 10 years, we're all going to realize that the only important property is like this intellectual property that we're creating as digital assets. People are going to probably spend more time trying to cultivate their online personality so they have a higher reputation in real life. I got to go to, I was at a conference in New York, and I got to go to a concert where Beck played like 30 feet away from me because my friend had a Bored Ape Yacht Club. And so
Wow.
we got free concert tickets because he had a digital asset. So we got access in real life because of a digital reputation. And that's starting to quickly take hold where the digital world now dominates the physical world in a very meaningful way. I think it's just slightly scary that, you know, we haven't figured out how to kind of properly govern the digital world yet as this is happening, but we're gradually seeing a lot of people start to take that on as a project. So I think we're in good shape.
I love that. I love that. You know, I actually see a world, and I'm very, very, very excited about it, where the predominant movers and shifters of the productive workforce, the productive adults in the economy, are going to be people who grew up, who are now teenagers, right? Who have grown up in a world where they're very comfortable buying skins in video games. They get that. That's not weird to them. And in fact, they like that because it's a way to express themselves both from like a social hierarchy perspective, but also just like their own personal creative expression of like, I wear, you know, from like a fashion sense, I wear these clothes to feel good about myself. Well, it's going to be, I have these digital things, these NFTs, because I feel good about myself. And this is a way for me to express that and to me to reflect externally what I feel about myself on the inside. Right. And so once we hit that level where the teenagers of today who've grown up with that as a very normal part of their everyday life, and they hang out online, they're buying skins online, that is a status symbol. And once they get to be 20, 30, 40 years old and really have money and buying power, like what does everybody think is going to happen? I mean, do you think that that NFTs being the digital infrastructure to make this stuff happen, being the most elegant way of assigning property rights, and the metaverse being the place where everybody then goes to exist to enjoy all of those pieces of property? Do you think that's going to go away? Like what?
I don't see it going anywhere, to be honest. I think the really interesting tipping point that's coming up is when older people cannot talk to their kids because they can't travel to see them. And so they'll call them on the phone. But now, you know, my grandma knows how to use Google Meets and Facebook Messenger to make video calls. And so it's only a matter of time before a lot of people are actually having real world interactions in VR as well. And there's probably going to become quickly a tipping point there where VR property and nice skins for your VR environment will become very valuable. I think if you look at Meta recently, when they announced that their latest kind of PR thing where Mark Zuckerberg was walking around in Meta when they changed the name, I think, they had the home environment for the Oculus. And this is like kind of the strangest thing that you would think of. But when you turn on your Oculus and you put the goggles on your face, then you have a home environment, and this home environment is, you know, probably something you're going to see every day, and it's where your friends are going to see when you invite them to a party. So that immediately becomes something where like that can be an incredible artistic pursuit that somebody spends quite a lot of time on and still creates a reasonable amount of value for that time that they put into it. So we're starting to dedicate a lot of human time towards creating better metaverse environments and metaverse experiences, which is very exciting or very terrifying, depending on how you see it. I have an ex-girlfriend that climbs mountains, and she's very terrified of the metaverse because she thinks everybody's going to stop climbing mountains and go stand around in the metaverse. I think it's a bit of a balance. You know, I was snowboarding 2 weeks ago. Next week I'll be buying NFTs. We kind of balance the two, and life is probably okay.
Totally. I totally think it's going to be okay because the people who want to be outside and go climb mountains IRL, they're not going to not do that anymore. Like, you know, I'm like you. I love winter sports. Like, I'm about to go skiing in March. I'm not going to not do that. Like, skiing is way too fun. But in the summer, if I miss it and I can't do it IRL, but I could throw on some goggles and go ski, but then instead of like skiing a normal mountain, I could go ski a space mountain and like be fighting dragons at the same time. Like, of course I'm gonna want to do that. That's gonna be freaking
Of course.
sweet.
Anytime that you can fight dragons and snowboard is going to be a great day. I would love those experiences.
Exactly, exactly. Cool, man. Well, hey, I super appreciate you coming on the show today. I really just kind of want to start closing it down because we have, we're getting close to time here. But really, just I'm just interested in kind of exploring your vision of like what you see as humanity's end game as far as the whole metaverse, crypto, Web3. Like, where are we going as humans, as people? And I know I kind of asked you this a little bit before, but I want to ask it again, in a little bit different way. But like, what are you most excited about that future?
It's global telepathy. That's what it's for. That's the whole point of the internet, the metaverse, all this stuff. It just brings people an ability to connect that they never had before. And what that means is all of the people who aren't exactly like the mold now have a bunch of friends. Because if you go to a bar, the average person in the bar is going to be a certain mentality. If you join an intramural sports team, the average person is a certain mentality. And in those physical spaces, the dominant vibe is always going to be the group of people that yells the loudest and stands the closest together. If you have a group where you are connecting with people just purely based on an interest that you share with them, that's going to be a deeper bond and a more meaningful connection. And I think it's gradually going to restore people's faith in society. Because so far what we've seen with mass media has been systems that were controlled by one person promoting their ideas or the dominant narrative that they wanted to share. That's how TV works. It's how radio works. It's how print worked before that. The new systems that we have today are built by the people who want to share their idea. And the people who want to share ideas the most are usually the weirdest ones. So we're going to see a whole bunch of really weird ideas that everybody loves. And then those people are going to go off and build that thing. And then it's going to exist. And when it exists, it might become mainstream, even though 10 years ago, those people never would have been able to talk about it. And I think that's actually kind of what happened with crypto, which is why I'm here. I love this stuff.
Me too. Me too. And I know as somebody who is certifiably weird, I definitely love connecting with other people who think outside of the box and bring a fresh perspective to things and actually have a unique, original viewpoint that's not just a canned response that they practice by listening to the same echo chamber over and over and over again. So,
Yeah, exactly. Hey, wait, last thing. This certifiably weird NFT, we should start giving those out to people.
Yeah, that would be cool. You could almost have like a little badge that you have in the metaverse of like, I'm certifiably weird. It's the new Twitter checkmark.
That would be much better than a Twitter checkmark. But yeah,
Yeah.
thank you again for having me, Ben. It's been
Yeah.
great.
Absolutely, Al. You're the man. I appreciate you. To the Koi Nation out there, much love to y'all and to everybody pushing forward the boundaries of what's possible there, and to everybody watching and listening. I love y'all. Thank you so much, and I will see you all on the next episode.